Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Kathy Fitzmaurice from the Central Office, and I will be your host for today's webinar, LinkedIn for Business. Your microphones and telephones are currently muted to eliminate background noise during the program. We will take questions at the end of the presentation. To ask a question, either type it into the question box on your control panel, or if you have a working microphone, raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon and I will unmute you. Today's program is being recorded and will be available through WebMQS in the Shared Resources section. And I'd like to thank Kurt Anderson from our Jamestown SBDC for arranging this webinar. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm very pleased to introduce Dennis Brown, LinkedIn guru and author of The 7 Habits of Highly Successful LinkedIn Users. Welcome, Dennis.
Thanks for having me, Kathy. Appreciate it. So everybody, listen, I want to thank you guys for all attending. It's a funny story on how I came to get involved in this webinar and with the SBDC, and oddly, it directly links back to LinkedIn. And so I think it was probably a year or so ago, maybe a little bit longer, I connected with Kurt Anderson on LinkedIn, and then we developed a little bit of a relationship. I helped him. I did like a seminar down there at JCC. We had great reviews. We had great turnout. Shortly thereafter, I met Fred Bristol, who was another one of your colleagues from who was a teacher at Buff State. He invited me in to do some seminars and some speaking. The results were great, and we've had a lot of fun. So I want to thank those two guys. I have a lot of fun working with them, and they're great guys. So thank you both. Thank you, Kathy, for arranging this. And today we're going to talk a little bit about LinkedIn. Now, I understand we have Kathy, we've got about 5 or 6 hours, right? We're doing this. This is like an all-day thing. Everybody has to stay pinned at their desk.
We will take a 15-minute break for lunch, but that's it.
Right, yeah, it's 5 hours, 15 minutes break in the middle. So, no, I've got what do I got, about an hour, Kathy, roughly?
Yep, that's right.
Okay, I got about an hour. So what I've got to do is I've got to take this very small piece of my brain that probably is 10 hours worth of content and try to leave you with something meaningful within an hour. So obviously I can't really do a super deep dive, but I want to touch on some really important things. Before we dive into that, I'll tell you 1 minute about myself and then we'll move on. I've been an entrepreneur and business owner for over 20 years in Western New York. I live in Clarence, just outside of Buffalo, and we have been very, very blessed. I've been fortunate enough to build 3 multi-million-dollar companies, and the last company I built was a logistics company, a third-party logistics, a freight management company that was ranked by Inc. magazine on their their Inc. 500 fastest growing company list. That's my claim to fame, okay? So, that was great for us. We had some significant growth. We grew from startup in 2003 to over $50 million in sales last year, and I was fortunate enough to sell that company recently. And that's how I got involved in LinkedIn. During the process of building that logistics company, I stumbled across LinkedIn, started to learn what it was all about, and the next thing you know, I landed a 6-figure client for my logistics company. And the light bulb went on. I said, one of two things just happened. Either I had just hit the LinkedIn lottery, or maybe I stumbled across the golden egg. So I took the second thought process, I dove in, and I learned everything I could about LinkedIn, and I developed a platform and a system for marketing on LinkedIn for my own business, for my logistics company. And over the next several years, we generated over $20 million in new business through our LinkedIn marketing platform. And I want you to understand one thing, it's very important. I never spent a dime's worth of advertising. None of that revenue came from advertising on LinkedIn. It was all through more guerrilla marketing and strategic strategies that we had deployed within LinkedIn as a free user of LinkedIn. We didn't even have premium accounts, just so you know. All right, so with that, I was thinking about what do I talk about today for you as business advisors with the SBDC. And I thought, I have just recently, I was on a podcast, maybe you guys have heard of Entrepreneur on Fire, EO Fire, with John Lee Dumas, very, very popular podcaster in the business realm. If you haven't heard of it, you might want to check it out, eofire.com. And I was interviewed by John recently, and I put together a free report for his listeners. He has over 1 million downloads a month, And I put together a free report called LinkedIn on Fire, 5 steps to start generating highly targeted leads today. So I'm going to take some of the content that I'm going to share with you from this brand new report. Now this report has only been released to his fans. It's not something that's out there at large, and it literally just released Monday. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And obviously, when we talk about LinkedIn, one of the most important parts to these 5 steps is optimizing your profile. But what I don't want to do today is I don't want to do a deep dive on optimizing your profile, because I think Kurt has done a really good job, because I know he's done some webinars in the past. And when we leave here today, I'm going to give you this resource. I'm going to allow you guys to take this resource with you as a way that you guys can use as kind of a study guide or something to implement for yourself, or possibly even share with your clients as a way to try to help them. So you guys are going to walk away from this today. So I'm going to do a quick overview about optimizing your profile, and then we're going to dive a little bit more into steps 2, 3, 4, and 5, which is, I think, a little bit more meat and potatoes of where you guys will really find it maybe a little bit more interesting. So optimizing your profile. First and foremost, everybody, one of the biggest mistakes I see on LinkedIn is people are using LinkedIn like a resume. Their profile reads like a resume. If you're gainfully employed and or you are an entrepreneur, your LinkedIn profile is not a resume. Don't treat it like a resume. It shouldn't read like a resume. It shouldn't look like a resume. That is the #1 biggest mistake. You need to use it as more of a reputation building platform. It's something that builds your credibility. It's something that builds your credentials, positions you as a thought leader, positions you as an expert, positions you as a valuable resource. That is first and foremost. You have to understand that. Surprisingly, I highlighted that in yellow here on the screen as a part of this report, because that is a huge mistake. So one of the first things you got to do is you got to add a good photo. This guy, don't be that guy, right? The party guy, you don't want to be that guy. This lady here, the bad crop job with her boyfriend's arm around her, or maybe it's not her boyfriend, who knows where that picture was taken. The shrunken head guy, definitely don't do that, okay? Because you've got one chance, guys, in life, in social media, and in LinkedIn is no different. You have one chance to make a good first impression. And if you don't take advantage of it fully, then you can't control the outcome. And at the end of the day, you may never get another opportunity. And on LinkedIn and other social platforms, people are finding your profile. They're looking at you behind the scenes, and you don't even know they're looking at you. Now, LinkedIn, you have a great feature because you have, who's viewed your profile, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But in most cases, you don't know who they are. You don't know when they're going there, and they're making those first impressions and judgments based upon what they see. So have a good photo. I don't want to spend a ton of time on that. It seems pretty rudimentary, but make sure you have a good solid photo. That doesn't mean you have to go out and have, spend $300 or $400 or $500 on some photo shoot. Just get a good solid photo. This was a photo I had. Right here was a photo I had at an event where I was speaking at an event. They took a photo and I plugged it in. It's a decent photo. I mean, I'm probably a little bit overweight, but anyway, it's a decent photo. I'm smiling and I think it's professional. So write a compelling headline. After the photo, you got to write a compelling headline. One of the differences, and I'm going to increase the size of this here so you guys can see it a little better, is, one of the things that people don't realize is that this photo and this headline follow you everywhere you go on LinkedIn. So you have to have a compelling headline. Most people make the mistake of positioning this as their title, right? CEO, Director of Marketing, Business Advisor, right? These types of titles, they're accurate, they're just not compelling. I'm going to be honest with you guys. Nobody cares what your title is. They don't care. What they care is what's in it for me. What is in this deal for me? How can you benefit me? What value can you bring to the table for me? So this is an example of what my headline looks like, and I change my headline periodically, and you can as well. LinkedIn marketing expert, how to outperform cold calling by over 900%, speaker and 6-time Inc. 500 fastest growing CEO. Now I strategically put all of that content in there. Why? Because I want to draw a picture. without ever speaking a word to my audience of who I am. And this tells them, number one, I'm a consultant. Number two, I can help them solve their cold calling issue because everybody hates cold calling. And number three, I've built a business that was on Inc. 500, so I've been in their shoes. I know what it's like to build a real traditional business. So write a compelling headline. That's really important, all right? Bad headlines, here's some examples of bad headlines, right? And here's some examples of good headlines or better headlines, right? You can come up with your own. Feel free to, I say that plagiarism is the greatest form of flattery. Feel free to plagiarize and customize, use my headline, use other people's headlines as a way to develop your own headline. Next, we want to talk about creating a good summary and experience section. The key is, one of the two biggest mistakes I see is number one, they're too short, and so I call it short and not so sweet, meaning they might be one very generic, bland sentence, and it does nothing to build your credibility, nothing to build your brand, nothing to build your reputation, or it falls into the novella category where you tell your life story, your career history in 2 to 5 really long, boring paragraphs that nobody's going to read. I got news for you. Nobody's going to read it. And so people are very busy. We live in a world of chaos. We all have ADHD, and they're just not going to read it unless you position it as something that's, that's in bite-sized pieces. So here's an example of, my summary. And my summary is by no stretch perfect, but I have a format that I teach and a format that I use. And so you guys can see here at the top, I use credibility. I talk about the fact that I'm an author, and I actually have a call to action where people can get my book. If they want the seven habits of highly successful LinkedIn users, they just go to www.linkedin or linkedacademy.com. They download it. So now I'm building my reputation. The next thing I talk about is what I do, how can I help, and who can I help? And you notice these are not big long paragraphs. These are bite-sized pieces. They're short sentences. They're bullet points. And they're very easy to digest. And none of this is talking about me. Everything is talking about what I do, but not or the value I can provide, but not about me. The only time we talk about myself is I put a little short bio at the bottom, talks a little bit about me and a passionate entrepreneur and some of the things that I've done. So, one of the keys is to remember, you're not trying to optimize your profile for every single person that's on LinkedIn. Okay, and that surprises people when I say that sometimes. What you're trying to do is you're trying to optimize your profile for your perfect customer avatar, for your target market, for your niche. And for you as business advisors, it's a little bit different because it's a little bit more geographical located, and I'm sure you have some niches where you guys can offer the biggest benefit, but you're a resource for local businesses, and so you want to tailor it as such. So as we move on here, the next thing you want to talk about, the next thing we're going to just address really quickly is adding media. You want to add some media to your profile under your summary, under your experience. You want to add some media. LinkedIn was very intelligent when they gave us the ability to add photos and videos and slide shares and all kinds of different media. And the reason why is this: it's very simple. There's an old idiom that says a picture's worth 1,000 words. I guarantee you every single person on this webinar has heard that before, and it couldn't be more true. Online, offline, and LinkedIn is no different. So what you want to do is you want to integrate in some media. For example, I'll give you a quick example here. Some of the media that I've integrated into here are interviews that I've done, different podcasts that I've done, the book that I wrote, Inc. 500. This all helps to build my credibility. It all helps to build my brand. It all helps to tell that story of me being a credible resource, a trustworthy resource, someone that can be trusted with the type of information that I can deliver with my content. So I also added media down here below my experience, which is my consulting business, which, some of it's duplicate, my free report, another interview I was involved with, and how to connect with influencers in the media on LinkedIn, and then another podcast that was geared specifically about coaching and coaches utilizing LinkedIn. So, using media can be extremely powerful, and this is, in my report here, I talk a little bit how to integrate in the media and why. And then the next thing, this is really, really important, and people get a little bit uncomfortable with this sometimes. I'm not quite sure why, but get LinkedIn recommendations. I'm not talking about necessarily endorsements. I'm talking about recommendations. There's another old saying that says, when you say it, it's called bragging. But when others say it, it's called proof, right? Social proof. So what you want to do with your profile is you want to integrate in recommendations, or what, in the traditional world is what we call testimonials. Here's a couple of testimonials that I added here to this little presentation that I wanted to share with you guys because they help tell the story. I'm not telling you how great I am. Jamie Masters, who is a super successful entrepreneur, is telling you why she thinks that my information, my knowledge, my experience is valuable. Jim Morency, a client of mine who's in the insurance industry, tells you why you should listen to me and why my content and information is valuable, my training. Robin Merritt's a client of mine. She's in the logistics industry. She tells you why. Jack Bogger is a web design guy. He's another client, owns a web development company, super successful web development company, and he tells you why. Craig Donovan, remember that old saying, I can't tell you enough. When you say it, it's called bragging, but when others say it, it's called proof. That social proof is in many cases the difference between being a trusted resource or not. So integrating them into your profile is very important. I've been very, very fortunate. I've got 58 recommendations from different people regarding my LinkedIn training, consulting, and speaking. And so, you don't necessarily have to go that far. I tell everybody get as many as you can, but you or your clients, you should probably get at least 10 or 15 or more, somewhere 10, 15, 20 recommendations, and never stop. Continue to add those to your profile over time so you can see how, and these people span all kinds of different industries, all geography, and they're talking about different content and training and consulting that I've delivered over the last several years. So recommendations are very, very powerful. Okay, great. So I only took about 15 minutes on step one. So that means it gives us, about 45 minutes or so to cover the remaining steps. Now, I hope this isn't true, but Kathy tells me that you guys have a tendency not to ask a lot of questions. It might be the mic, it might be you're shy, it might be who knows, whatever the case may be. I'm hoping at the end of this that I can finish a little bit early and we can get a little bit of a dialogue going and actually asking questions. So, if you have questions along the way, write them down. I'll be glad to answer them. I think it becomes the most valuable part of presentations like this when I can expand on something that's specific to your needs, because a lot of times if something is confusing to somebody, that becomes that roadblock that stops them from moving forward. So the next step, and step two, which is creating your perfect prospect profile. When I have a client that I work with, no matter where they are in the country or the world, one of the things we spend a lot of time on is creating what I call their perfect prospect profile. And so, I do this because what I find is that a lot of times people that use LinkedIn or try to use LinkedIn, they have a very haphazard approach to it. They don't have a system, they don't have a strategy, and I can tell you that hope and randomness is not a strategy. So we hone in on that perfect prospect profile because the reality is I hear people all the time telling me, well, social media doesn't work, LinkedIn doesn't work, Twitter doesn't work, Facebook doesn't work. Well, if I were to do an analysis of your network, the reason why it doesn't work is because you're spending 90% of your time with the wrong audience. Right? You're spending all your time talking to all the wrong people, and you wonder why you're not getting clients. You wonder why you're not getting engagement. Well, you need to curate your time and your content around your exact targets. So you need to be spending 90% of your time with your target market and 10% of your time outside of that target market. And if you do that, good things can happen. So one of the things that I do, a very simple exercise that I use with my clients, is I have them sit down and we talk about how to create a perfect prospect profile. It talks about what industries are they in, what geography, the titles of the decision makers, the company size, the groups they might belong to, the LinkedIn groups they might belong to, and other important characteristics that might be very specific or relevant to your industry, niche, or market. So here's an example of a very basic profile for someone a client of mine in the IT consulting business. And he was focusing on healthcare, financial services, and education markets. Those are the industries he was highly targeted. He was targeting these geographies: Dallas, Houston, Austin. Obviously, he had a heavy focus in on Texas. The titles of some of his decision makers or influencers were CIO, CTO, CEO, VP, Director of IT, so on and so forth. So we identified some of those key titles. The company size was around 20, starting at about 25 upwards to about 500 employees. So he was looking at small to medium-sized businesses, but not startups. And then some of the LinkedIn groups that they would be involved in would be like the CIO Forum or the CTO Network or Healthcare Information Technology, so on and so forth. So that's a basic, profile that someone could put together. Now you could expand on that and elaborate on that, but the value of that it is going to be evident here in one of our next steps, okay? And so the next step is finding your perfect prospect. So now that we've drawn a picture of exactly who that customer avatar is, who is that person that we're going after? Who is it that your clients are trying to connect with, network with, develop a relationship with? And so finding your perfect prospect involves using that prospect profile that we just created and then leveraging the advanced search features of LinkedIn to help you get there. So that profile that I used where we were talking about CEO or CTO or CIO, the one we just did, that sample one, and the people were in Dallas, Austin, Houston, and they're in the financial markets, financial services, and the other, healthcare and whatnot. I did a query in the advanced search, and here were the results. Of 837 results from that query of people. Now that's my network, okay? This is me doing the search. 837 people in that fit that exact advanced search criteria, which was based upon our customer profile, right? Our perfect prospect profile. So you can see that these are people that are CEOs of, in the healthcare industry, right? Hospital and healthcare industry. This guy's a CEO of health, a hospital and health in the healthcare industry. And you can see these are good, solid targets, right? And so, what we've done is we've been able to very quickly and easily identify who our customer avatar is and then find them on LinkedIn using advanced search. So, what you're going to want to do at that point is obviously, create some sort of a list and then migrate those names offline. LinkedIn does not do a very good job in being able to manage lists. Now they do have a tagging feature that you can use. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it because I don't think it's really, it's okay, but it doesn't quite fit the bill for tracking, follow-up activity and notes and tracking that. So what LinkedIn is not a very good CRM, but it is a great tool for networking and generating leads and brand awareness and creating and building your credibility. So step 4 is you want to engage with your prospects, right? So you hear this word engagement, right? And if you could see me right now, I've got my hands up doing the air quotes. So visualize that. You hear about this word engagement. Well, it's a little trendy, but I'm going to use it, and the reason why is because, just because you connect with somebody in the digital world, whether it be Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn or whatever platform you're using, doesn't mean that you're ever going to build a relationship with them. What you've got to do is you've got to create some engagement. You've got to develop some sort of rapport digitally and online before you're ever going to typically be able to convert that relationship offline, which is where the magic really happens in most cases for most businesses. So here's how we would do it. There are several ways you can get a little bit of engagement. One is to post an update with your network. Now, on LinkedIn, it's very simple to post an update. what you would do is you would simply go to your profile or log in, go to the home page, and at that point you could share an update, you could share an image. You know, there's a lot of things you can do. If I wanted to share an update, all I do is click share update, and I could easily share a link to a blog post, which could autofill. I could type in some content, or I could upload an image, right? So there's a lot of ways to share an update, and the biggest reason why you would want to share an update is because this update is going to go into the news feed of all of your connections. Now I've got over 7,000 connections, so some people in my network are going to see that. Statistically, what you're going to find out is if you post one update a day, just one a day, and you typically post those somewhere between 8 and 9:30 in the morning, which is when the heaviest usage and activity on LinkedIn is, what you're going to find is that over the course of a month, you're going to touch 60% of your network. Those are statistics that LinkedIn has released. So one post a day, one update a day. Now, I'm not talking about publishing an article. I'm just talking about sharing an update, right? So for example, say for example, an article came out on Inc. magazine, which is a periodical that I follow. You guys have probably all heard of. 12 business ideas start right now. If I wanted to use this as some content, I would simply cut and paste it, the link, paste it over here, and now you've got a preview of it, and I might put something in here, what business ideas are you working on right now? And then at that point, or what business are you in? And then to gather some engagement coupled with some content. So that's an example of creating some engagement with your network, because those people are going to like it, comment, and at that point you're going to start to get a little bit of a dialogue. And even if they don't, what you've done is they've been able to see your name. So sorry to bounce back and forth, but let's look at, for example, Kevin Dahl just did an update 19 minutes ago he's in my network, and I see his picture and I see his title. Now he's not doing a very good job with utilizing the headline, but at the same time, I've never spoken to Kevin Dahl, but Kevin he's building his familiarity with me, because as I see his name more and more, if the opportunity does come to connect in the future, I'm much more likely to connect with him if I've seen his name and he's provided valuable resources. Now, he's doing a few things wrong here. He needs a little bit of help, and I probably should reach out to him because he is the CEO of Next Goal International, which I'm assuming has something to do with hockey. And at the end of the day, sharing this information here will create some familiarity and will help grease the wheels when you do want to migrate those conversations offline. Posting to a common group, you could take those exact same type of posts and post to a group. So whatever groups your prospects belong to, you want to join, and then at that point you want to post relevant and important content to those groups to create some engagement. You can publish your own content. LinkedIn made a very smart move, in my opinion, by creating a publishing platform that allows every free user the ability to have their own blog. They don't need to learn WordPress. They don't need to pay for hosting. They don't need to do any of that. What they did is they hijacked a blogging platform, and they basically built it into LinkedIn and allowed anybody to create their own articles and become their own publisher. So here's an example of how that works. I'll give you an example of a couple articles that I wrote. Oops, sorry guys, we're navigating around here, but here's what the publisher articles look like. So here's an example of some of the articles. Here's an article that I wrote. Oddly enough, I wrote this article at probably 1 o'clock in the morning. I went and saw the new Star Wars movie. It was very top of mind, so I wrote this article, 3 Ways to Use LinkedIn Like a Jedi Knight. Might seem a little corny, but 725 people viewed that article. 39 people liked that article, and 13 people commented. So, I shared some information that was topical, that was relevant at the time because of the release of the movie, and I shared some important information and integrated in some LinkedIn lessons and strategies that I've learned over the years. And then from there, I integrated in a lead magnet where anybody can get this book and download it, gather some additional information, and that in turn raises their hand and creates a sales lead for me that could potentially become a consulting client or otherwise. So that's an example of publishing your own content. Sending a custom connection request. that's engagement, with someone that you don't know. So one of the things that, another huge mistake that people make is when they try to connect with people, they send a generic connection request. It says something like, I'd like to add you to my LinkedIn network. It's generic. It tells people that you haven't taken the time to really understand who they are and that you're not really that interested in connecting with them and you're lazy, but you're going to send it out anyway. So what you need to do is you need to send a custom connection request, and the formula for sending a custom connection request is very simple. You simply click on their profile, you hit connect, and at that point you're going to fill it out by looking at one of a few different areas that you have in common. What connections do we have in common? What groups do we have in common? What geography do we have in common? And or what common interests do we have as a part of that intro? And you're simply going to say to them, it'd be great to connect. You're not going to beat them over the head with your pitch. You're not going to try to sell them anything. The only thing you're trying to sell them is the fact that you have some common ground and that it would make sense to connect on LinkedIn digitally. That's it. That's first base. That's all you're trying to accomplish. Once you get good at sending custom connection requests to people that are a part of your target audience, you're going to get 70, 80, 90% connect rates. When you first start out, you might get 30, 40, 50%, but as you get better at it, your numbers can sway significantly and you can get a much higher connect rate with your target audience, okay? So sending a connection request is huge. Get introduced by somebody. Well, we've all done that in the traditional world, so use the same thing here with your LinkedIn connections. If you have somebody that is a part of your perfect prospect profile that you think you can provide value to, and somebody knows them, get introduced. Use the LinkedIn introduce feature, or just have your friends send an email to them if they know them and do a quick introduction. That's just business 101, right? Networking and getting referrals. Another little hack here that I use that I think can be very, very powerful in developing rapport digitally and to show up on somebody's radar is liking, commenting, mentioning, and or sharing their recent updates. So let's take for example, I'll give you an exact example here. So say for example, I wanted to show up on, I wish that doll guy's thing was here, but here. Say Lily was part of my prospects, right? She was somebody that I wanted to connect with, right? So if I wanted to connect with Lily, or we had already connected, but I wanted to develop some engagement and some rapport, because she's already a first level connection, I believe, right? She's already a first level connection. I have never met her, but she is a first level connection. What I could do is simply like this article, and what's going to happen is it's going to show up in her notifications as the fact that I liked her article. Remember, whenever that happens, it's going to show up. It shows my name and it shows a little bit about what I do. Most cases, when somebody likes it, you're going to click on their profile, take a look at them. So it's going to create some familiarity. She posted it because she's looking for engagement. Give her some engagement. If I comment on it, it's even better. If I share it, it's even better. So by simply liking, commenting, sharing, and or mentioning, somebody in a post or an update, can go a long way to creating a little bit of rapport digitally. And again, I call it's kind of like an icebreaker to create some awareness and familiarity with the ultimate goal of greasing the wheel to step 5, which is converting those conversations offline, okay? The next thing is sending relationship building messages. I'm a big guy, a big proponent on taking LinkedIn and using it more like a campaign than just a one-off tool to connect with people. So one of the things that I teach is creating nurturing and relationship developing messaging campaigns for my target market. And the way that works is, once you're connected to them, first of all, it's important that you don't beat them over the head with your pitch, right? Don't be that guy. That guy, nobody likes that guy. Don't be that guy. Number 2 is avoid messaging them too often. I tell you, once or twice a month is ideal. And then make sure your message focuses on providing real value. It's not a pitch fest. It's value. You're providing them information, them value. And the ultimate goal, as I want to restate here, is to position yourself as a valuable resource versus just another salesperson trolling for a commission check. All right? So diving into the messaging piece, we're going to dive into that in step 5, but that's creating engagement with with your target market, either whether they're connected with you or not. Okay? So now we're going to talk about step 5, and this is really where the rubber hits the road, right? Because you have to convert these conversations offline. Let's face it, most products and services on a local level are not bought online. Some of them can be, but in most cases, people are still buying products and services locally through their local business owners, through their locations, their retail locations. And so you got to convert those conversations offline, particularly if you're in the B2B world. And so, you know, one of the things that is really important, and one of the things that made all the difference for me, is that my focus was 2 things. Number 1 was to just simply break traction and get a connection with them, allow them to connect with me by sending them a custom connection request, them then checking out my profile, building a good first impression, creating that impression, and then from there, providing them value and ultimately creating an appointment, whether that be on the phone or face-to-face in the offline world. And so, you know, what I found is that compared to cold calling, which we all know typically has an ROI statistically of about 2%. That means 2 out of 100 cold calls lead to an appointment. What I found is by doing it this way, you get 10x. So you literally can turn that into 20 appointments or more. I've seen clients that have turned it into 30, 40 appointments out of 100 or more. And I have campaigns that regularly can turn 100 prospects into 40 or 50 conversations with my target audience, which is exponentially better than cold calling. So, you know, converting those conversations offline is really important, and the way you do that is what I call putting together a kind of you may have heard of Gary Vaynerchuk. You know, he wrote a book recently called Jab, Jab, Right Cross. And, you know, I've been using a very similar type of strategy, although he sold millions of books doing it and probably made a ton of money. But I use a very similar strategy called what I call give, give, ask, right? And so give, give, ask is a method that I use for developing a relationship and building rapport with a potential client, and then ultimately converting those conversations offline. So here's something that you might use. It's, you know, when you first connect with somebody, a simple example of a campaign is send a thank you message, right? You're going to send a thank you message to them. Most people don't do that, by the way. They don't send out thank you messages. It's a great way to create a good first impression. Don't beat them over the head with your pitch. That's not the goal. The goal is to simply thank them, give them a sincere thanks, and provide any value you might be able to provide. The second message might be 2 or 3 weeks later, and it's something that provides value. Maybe it's an article or a link to an article for some relevant content to that target. You know, the next one might be some more relevant information. Maybe it's a webinar you're doing. Maybe it's a white paper. Maybe it's a video that has been created that target audience would find valuable. Not something that you think is interesting, but something that your target market is going to want to consume. And then maybe in your fourth message, it's just an ask for a call. You know, a couple weeks later, you know, you remind them that you connected a while back and that you'd like to schedule a brief introductory call, you know, a networking call. And the simple goal is to learn a little bit more about what they do and to find out, is there anyone in your network that you can connect them with? So do you see the difference? Do you see how the focus is me providing value to them, not me asking them for anything, but me focusing on providing them value, right? So these, you know, if I connect with them and they see that I have 7,000 people in my network and I'm pretty influential in the business world, and I get on the phone with them and tell them, hey, listen, you know, let me learn a little bit more about what you do, then maybe there's somebody that in my network that I can connect you with. Do you see the difference between that versus saying, hey, listen, I want to sell you something? or I want to pitch you, or I want to beat you over the head with my product or service. Well, unfortunately, that's what most salespeople do. Even if they do get to this point, they don't handle the conversation properly. It's not focused on providing value. So, people love to get referrals, that are potential hires, vendors, or customers. So asking for that call and offering value, what you're going to find is that a lot of people will schedule those introductory calls. So what I tell clients is this: what would it do for your business? What would it do for your business if you could meet and have a conversation with 100 high-profile targets, 100 high-profile targets of your perfect customer profile in the next 90 days? What would it do for your business in the next 6 to 12 months? Well, one of the gentlemen I asked that to, responded with, Dennis, it would generate me at least $1 million in new business. Now, he had an IT business. It would generate me at least $1 million in new business just based upon my closing ratios and based upon the service that we offer. So I laughed and said, yeah, obviously I'm not charging you enough, but we laughed. He's a client and he's done very well. So at the end of the day, this type of strategy of building rapport, all right, and then providing value and then migrating those conversations offline, it's not super complex. I mean, we're not curing cancer. I'm not a rocket scientist. I'm a fairly average guy, probably was never, and I am never the smartest guy in the room, but I'm a guy who can figure out and create systems. I'm a guy who has a high tolerance for pain and rejection. And so I've been fortunate enough to develop this system and use it for my own business. And from there, it's been able to, I've been very, very fortunate particularly over the last couple of years as I consult with clients. Currently what I do is I consult with business owners, executives, entrepreneurs, consultants, speakers, and sales teams all over the place. And I teach them my LinkedIn marketing system. That's what I do. That's what I did for Kurt. I went and taught, a group down at JCC. That's what I've done for Fred at Buff State with not only some entrepreneurs in a group they had there, a seminar they had there, but also I've taken a lot of time with students there at Buff State to try to help them get off to the right foot, because I believe that LinkedIn could be a powerful platform for them, and they typically pick it up quicker because they're a little different generation. So I mean, I could probably continue to ramble on here for a while. I guess the last piece is, let's take just a quick look at why this type of strategy works, right? I know that you're going to have to take a little bit of a leap of faith here that it does work, but I'm going to share with you why it works, right? First of all, once they review your profile and accept you into your network, you're no longer a stranger. You now have what I call a lukewarm connection. You literally, at that point, and I don't recommend this, but if you were to find their phone number and call them, you're not a stranger anymore, because you can say, hey, listen, we connected on LinkedIn about a week ago. Oh yeah, I recall, all right, or I remember, sure, great. Hey, how are you? How can I help you? So it's no longer a cold call, right? Secondly, if you took the time to share or comment or mention or like some of their content, they're going to be notified, and that further warms the connection, right? And then with your series of nurturing and relationship developing messages, starting with a sincere thank you, it's going to position you as a valuable resource. You're not out there trying to pitch your product. You're out there trying to create and provide value and put value into the market. And you're staying top of mind. And by the time you've reached the final step of asking them to connect on an introductory or discovery call, you've already differentiated yourself from 95% of your competitors, from 95% of the salespeople out there, by positioning yourself as a trusted resource. So, I mean, this is just one example of how to deploy what I call the give, give, ask campaign or strategy for converting those conversations offline. And I'm going to be honest with you guys, I wish I could hear you, but I probably should do it myself. I'm going to give myself a little bit of a round of applause, because I've never fit that much information into 45 minutes. So I think I just set my own world record, and I know that we had to go through it fast, but I really, really hope that some of you guys have questions, because I think that's really where it will become a little bit more concrete for you guys. Now, as you have questions, feel free, Kathy, if you want to chime in, or if anybody wants to send a chat message or whatever, or if you're going to put them on the line direct, or however you want to do that. How would you typically handle that, Kathy?
I'll read them out. We do have some questions already coming in, so I'll read them in the order.
Beautiful.
Yes, this is exciting. So I'll go ahead and start. The first question we have is from Andrew at our PACE SBDC office, and he asks, can you touch on differences, if any, for how content will differ when creating, updating a profile for an SBD center rather than for an individual?
Okay, so restate that if you would. I'm sorry. Just let me make sure I'm clear on it.
Sure. What differences, if any, would there be when you're creating a profile for, say, an SBDC office as opposed to an individual?
For an office. So you're talking about a company page that SBDC has. It's not a personal profile?
Right, exactly.
Okay, so, your personal profile, what I gave you, the optimization strategies that I gave you for your personal profile is geared towards individuals, not organizations. Now, if you want to create and optimize your company profile or your organizational profile, it's a little bit different process. And I'm going to be extremely honest with you. I'm not a big advocate of company profiles or organizational profiles. While they're necessary, I don't think people really use them. I think people on LinkedIn connect with people. They don't connect with companies. And those people become the segue or the ambassadors of the company, and that's how they get introduced. So if I have a company profile for my LinkedIn marketing and consulting business, but nobody ever goes there. And it's not that I don't want to drive them there. I want to drive them to my profile, particularly if I'm a brand ambassador or the owner of the business or a salesperson or a marketer. So there is a little bit of value there, and it's worth having. But, and I know that doesn't necessarily answer your question. I can't really teach you the optimization process for a company or organization, but those are my thoughts on how I think people utilize LinkedIn and how you'll find the most value with connecting with your target market.
That sounds good. We have more questions.
Go ahead.
Kate from our Jamestown office wants to know, well, she asks, some of our clients are working full-time, but building a side business of their own that is often completely unrelated to their current position. Do you have any recommendations for using LinkedIn to connect with different target audiences?
Yeah, that can be a little challenging. That's a really good question, Kate. Thank you for asking. And I get that question quite a bit because it seems like there's a lot of people out there that have a career, maybe their job is X, but they've also got a side business that does something completely different, right? Which is what you just explained. And so LinkedIn profile can be somewhat challenging when you try to optimize it for multiple groups. Like I said to you before, what you're really trying to do when you're optimizing your profile is focus in on your target market. So what my suggestion would be this, there's a couple of ways you can handle it. Number one, if it's not a conflict of interest, I probably wouldn't spend a whole lot of time optimizing your profile as it relates to your career, unless you're using it as a way, if you're a salesperson and your company is focused and is holding kind of you accountable for using it as a lead generation tool for your job, right? Your job, your career. I would probably focus more in on your side business and I would build the brand there. If your ultimate goal is to migrate away from that career into your own business full-time, or if your target market is a very good fit on LinkedIn for your side business, you might optimize your entire profile for your side business if that's the goal. And then your career would kind of fall to the backdrop. Now, there's a caveat to that, and that is if your employer has an issue with you having this side work, well, then you're definitely not going to want to highlight that side work because you don't want it to become a conflict of interest. You don't want it to become an issue or a discussion. You don't want it to become a problem for you because you don't want to lose your job. So I don't think there's one right answer, but I think you need to use a little bit of discretion and just a little bit of logic is it something where is it going to benefit you the most, as long as it's not a conflict with your current employer? And I think you really need to try to focus in with the optimization part on one primary market, as opposed to trying to spread it across different industries or different careers. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Dennis. Roxanne from our Mohawk Valley office wants to know, how important is it to have a background image?
You know, at one point I would have told you it probably wasn't a big deal. It's not a huge deal. This is, just so you know, you guys are looking at my screen, right? This is a stock image that LinkedIn provides. Could I create a custom image here? I could, and I am, because I'm in the process of designing a new website, and so I'm going to have a custom image in here. I think it adds to it a little bit. I don't think it's an absolute must, but what you have to understand is it's so easy to get an image that'll fit in there. I mean, you can actually go in here and simply click on, you know, this background image, and I can go in here and I can pick from, I think it's better to have something in the background than absolutely nothing. So I don't think it's critical, but I think it's better to have something than nothing. You don't necessarily have to go out and design a specific image for this background, because it would have to have certain measurements and so on and so forth, which you could get done very, very inexpensively on a site like Fiverr, right? I mean, you could probably get it done for $5 or $10 if you wanted to have an image edited specific to that. So I would say it's not an absolute must. It's a value add, and if you want to do that, go to Fiverr and have somebody customize an image for you. Good question, Roxanne. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Jennifer from our Canton office asks, is it a good idea to create one post and share it both on Facebook and on LinkedIn, or should LinkedIn posts be different than posts on your other social media accounts?
You know, well, I'll tell you from my experience, what I do is I typically post the same content or very similar content on my LinkedIn and my Twitter feed. Okay, so, and if you guys wanted to connect with me on Twitter, it's Ask Dennis Brown, and you can kind of see how that works. But I share a lot of the same content on those two platforms. So my answer to that is this: it really depends on your target market. So if your target market is businesses, right, and that's really heavily where we're focused on LinkedIn, is businesses, B2B selling. You know, Facebook may or may not be that audience. Now, you may have a Facebook page, you know, not your personal page, but a Facebook page that is geared towards that same target audience. If that's the case, I think sharing it is fine. You just want to make sure that you're speaking and sharing content with the right audience. Because let's face it, the audience on Facebook is different than LinkedIn. It just is. And that's okay. And the conversations on Facebook and LinkedIn are different. But if you think that that content fits your market and fits your audience on both sides, then I have no problem with you sharing it. I think it's a great idea. But if it doesn't, then don't. Because you don't want to post Facebook type content on LinkedIn. And if you're posting LinkedIn content on Facebook and it's not your target market, you know, you're going to get crickets.
Great question. Our next question, Christina wants to know, and I think she's referring back to when you send a thank you for them accepting your connection. She asked, what are we thanking them for? And what is the nature of the intro call, the sales pitch?
Okay, good question. So Christina, the thank you message is simply a differentiator and a sincere thank you. It might say something like, I'll give you an example of a thank you message that I use. I'll give you an actual example here. I'll pull it up. Let me see here. Let's see, where's a... Okay, so here's an example of a thank you message that I would send to a new connection. Thank you for connecting, Armstrong. The guy's name is Armstrong. As you can see from my profile, I help business owners, consultants, speakers, and sales teams around the world to leverage LinkedIn and social selling to generate more leads, customers, or profit. I wanted to do a very simple, short commercial. I wanted him to be clear on what I did. And then I provide value. I checked out your profile already, so if you're interested in connecting with some of my connections, just let me know and I'll be glad to help. And then I leave it with if kind of a free giveaway where they give my book and I ask for engagement. I appreciate your feedback. If they were to click on this, it brings them to a page where they can actually get a copy of my book, and that's where you guys would go if you wanted to get a copy of my book at the end of this as a kind of a takeaway. So that's an example of what a thank you message. Now, it doesn't have to have this part in here if you don't want. It depends on you. It could just be a very sincere thank you. But if you notice, the focus is me. I've checked out your profile, and if you're interested in connecting with any of my connections, just let me know and I'll be glad to help. Now, you know, very rarely does anybody ever take me up on that, but it's something that I'm offering value. I'm not asking them to introduce me. I'm not asking them to buy anything. So that's what a thank you message. You want to leave them with a good feeling, and it also gives you another touch point because very few people send thank you messages for connecting, right? And they've just allowed you to join their network, so you should thank them. You know, your goal was to become a connection. Why not thank them for it? You achieved your goal, and give yourself a little pat on the back too. Now, on the tail end of this, when you convert the conversations offline, when you finally get to that point where you convert a conversation offline and you have a phone call and or an appointment, what I strongly suggest is you take the same sort of approach. Focus on providing value. Don't focus on pitching. So I'll give you an example when I got my first client on LinkedIn and how that worked. So I connected with the gentleman. We ended up getting into a conversation, and this was early on. I was doing everything wrong because, like anything, we're always bad at something before we're good at it. But I was fortunate enough because we set up a phone call and we got on a quick 15-minute phone call. And I remember the first 13 or so odd minutes of that phone call, all we did was talk about him. We talked about his company, how he got his job, what he liked about his job, what he didn't like about his job, sports, family, all of that stuff. And all I did was I pretty much just sit there and listen. He dominated the conversation for about 13 minutes, and that was fine because I really wanted to understand what made him tick, and so I was just listening very intently. And then at the end of the conversation, you know, he felt almost obligated to ask me, so Dennis, tell me about this logistics business you started. And so at that point, I framed it in the form of how I had helped a company similar to his solve one of their logistics problems. And at the end of that conversation, you know, we exchanged contact information, and he gave me permission to follow up with him. And I had scheduled a follow-up with him about 90 days down the road, where I was going to follow up with him and have another conversation and continue to build some rapport and try to, at that point, determine if he had any pain or need or whether I could benefit him from a service perspective. And within about a month or so, I think it was about a month, he called me out of the blue and said, hey, Dennis, you know, do you remember me? I said, yeah, of course I do. How are you? He said, good. He goes, you do logistics, right? And I said, yeah. And he goes, well, I have a problem. And from that point on, I landed a six-figure client. And we had that client for over 6 years and generated probably close to about $1 million in revenue with just that one client. Now, let's point out, you asked the question, let's point out what I did and what I didn't do. What I didn't do was get on that phone and beat him over the head with my pitch, okay, because that just doesn't work. It doesn't work in any environment. It doesn't work when you're networking face-to-face in the traditional world, and it certainly doesn't work when you're networking virtually or through LinkedIn or any other social media. What I did is I built some rapport. I developed a little bit of a relationship with him. I slowed it down. Let's face it, it's not speed dating. We're not speed dating, guys. You know, this is about planting seeds, developing relationships, developing rapport, and positioning yourself as a reputable, credible, trustworthy resource. And so, you know, and what I did, the second thing I did is I listened. I didn't talk. I didn't dominate the conversation. And so, you know, and from that, you know, the benefit, you know, rolled forward. And I can tell you that had I not done those things that way, there's a very, very, very good chance that he would have never called me. He would have never been a client of mine. And that's the unfortunate situation that most salespeople are in. You know, they make it all about them rather than all about the client. And when you're in social selling or you're using LinkedIn or Twitter or any of these platforms to sell your product, you know, the selling of the product has to be a byproduct of building rapport, credibility, and a reputation as a valuable resource, not on the front end. It has to be a part of the back end. Okay? So I hope that helps, Christina.
Great, thanks, Dennis. One more question from Christina, who, by the way, is from our Farmingdale office. Do you suggest putting dates for college degrees, etc., even though it's not supposed to be a resume?
It's okay to have your college on there. Yeah, it's okay to have your college. And the reason why you want to have your college on there, I'll tell you, there's a feature on LinkedIn called alumni. And so here, I'm going to show you mine. I have my college on here somewhere. So I went to the University of Buffalo from 88 to 92. And the reason why you want to put your college on there, even though it's not a resume, is because LinkedIn has a feature called alumni somewhere, if I can find it. Here it is. If you go to network and you go find alumni, it's going to look at your college, and this is an incredibly valuable tool that's way underutilized. Okay, most people look at it as a way to find a college they want to go to, but I use it, it's crazy, I use it as a way to generate leads and develop relationships. And I've generated, I'm going to tell you right now, I've generated from this one feature of LinkedIn alone, I've generated over $1 million in revenue from the relationships and connections that I've developed through this one feature. And here's how it works. So I went there from 1988 to 1992. So those are going to be people that are kind of in my wheelhouse. You know, if I want to, so all of a sudden it took 130,000 people and sorted it down to 12,000. Now if I want to find people that are just local in Buffalo, now it's down to 3,200. Now if I want to find my market, which is much more geared towards, you know, entrepreneurs, business owners, now I can filter it down to 232 connections. And now look what I've got. Now I've got a list of business owners that are in the Buffalo area that all went to UB at the same time I went to UB. Now I may know some of these guys. This guy, George Shimon, I know. We wrestled on the same team at University of Buffalo. Some of these other people I may have met. But the fact is, and you're going to laugh, if you're not from Buffalo, you may not get this, but if you're from Buffalo, everybody that went to UB went to PJ Bottoms on Main Street in Buffalo when they were a freshman in college, even though they weren't of age, unfortunately. So that's the funny part. We have that common ground. So being able to develop relationships with these people, we have that common ground. You can see I'm connected with a lot of these people, first level connections, and the ones that I'm not, you know, I'd love to be and I should be. So, you know, it reminds me to come in here and develop some, you know, to make some additional connection requests with people, because what you'll find is that alumni, the fact that we're from the same college, we live in the same geography, and they're entrepreneurs, you know, probably 70–80% of those people will connect with me, and I will eventually convert a large percentage of them to a phone call or a face-to-face meeting. So I hope that, I know that was a little bit extended version of your question, but I hope it helped kind of fill in the blanks a little bit. And boy, Kathy, I'm not going to call you a liar, but I'm going to tell you, these guys have asked a lot of questions. Is this more questions than normal, or is this kind of normal?
No, this is more than usual, and I think it's all because of you.
Oh, I
Because you're
love it.
just so
Good.
wonderful. And Christina said this is one of the best webinars she's ever attended, and that you're a very engaging speaker.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Christina. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Kurt, and everybody who, you know, made the connections through LinkedIn to help me get here. I would love to connect with any of you. Any and all of you, feel free to reach out to me and connect. Let's connect on LinkedIn. And if I can help you in any way, once we're connected, shoot me a message. Shoot me a message through LinkedIn. You know, after all, we're talking about LinkedIn. You might as well use LinkedIn as a way and practice a little bit. So connect with me. You can just go to www.linkedin.com/Ask Dennis Brown, or if you just type in Dennis Brown LinkedIn, I'll pop up in the search results. You'll see my big shiny bald head. And we can connect. And then the other thing I would just strongly suggest you guys do, you guys were drinking from a fire hose. You got a lot of information, okay? A lot of information. What I would suggest you do is go over to linkedacademy.com and get that 7 Habits of Highly Successful LinkedIn Users. It's free, costs you absolutely nothing. And I'll also send you some additional training resources and materials after that. And again, I want to thank everybody. I want to thank Kurt and Kathy and everybody for inviting me onto the webinar, and I also want to thank everybody who engaged and attended. Truly appreciate it, and if I can ever be of any help, just holler.
Dennis, I hate to prolong this, but
Okay.
do you have time for another question?
Yes, I'm just kidding, of course.
Okay, great. What
Yeah,
is
yeah,
the
yeah.
value of Sales Navigator versus the basic free account, and what type of person would derive the most benefit?
Okay, so good. I'm glad you asked that. That's a really good question because everything that I've taught you up to this point and my entire system is based upon having a free account because, the free account gives you some pretty good reach, some pretty good functionality, but the Sales Navigator gives you everything that you can do with a free account, but it pumps it up a little bit. And if you've got a little bit of a budget, I think it can be valuable. But what I see is this. Most of my clients start out with a free account. And if they implement what they see, what I teach, and I quote, if they implement, because again, knowledge is potential power, you have to put it to work. If they implement it, I find that within a few months they all get a Navigator account. And here's why. Because the return on investment they realize the return on investment using LinkedIn the right way can be huge, like it has been for me. And the Sales Navigator gives you some additional features, and it's actually really cool. If you haven't had a sneak preview, let me give you a little sneak preview. I'm sure that LinkedIn won't mind me doing a commercial for them. So I can't do a training on Navigator right now, but what you can do is one of the things that's really valuable is if you save somebody as a lead, if they're a connection and they're now a lead, like this gentleman here was somebody that I had talked to about, he had asked me for a proposal on doing LinkedIn consulting. What I can do is I can see his updates out of all the other updates, out of the 7,000 plus connections that are putting updates. It allows me to see the updates that my target market is making, or the people that I have relationships with, or that I'm in negotiations or conversations with now, because those are the most important people that I may want to like, comment, and or engage with, right? So that's one of the features. The other thing is it gives you some expanded search capability, where you have the ability to search by some additional parameters, like you can search by company size, you can search by, it gives you a little bit more reach from the searchability piece, function, seniority level. Typically with a free account, you're not going to have that type of functionality. You do have keywords and company and geography, and you've got a lot of great features, but it gives you some expanded search reach. So I really do like Sales Navigator. It's not for everybody. It's not a must for everybody, but what I tell everybody to do is this: start out with a free account. If you start bumping your head on the ceiling and you start running into roadblocks that are preventing you from generating, more leads for your business, and you're having a little bit of success, do a 30-day trial. I think they have a 30-day free trial, to be honest with you. I think you can do, a lot of times they'll run those promotions where you can get on there for 30 days. And again, I don't get any commission from LinkedIn for doing this. I have no benefit, remuneration or otherwise. I'm not a, part of LinkedIn corporate. But try one of their free trials and check it out. But my suggestion to you, before you even waste the time doing that, is start implementing these strategies and things that we've talked about, and the things that are in my 7 Habits book, and your free account first, and then do a trial. But I hope that answers the question, but it is a good question. I do find that most people that implement will migrate to that eventually.
Great answer. I've got this guy here at my office who's had his hand raised for a while. So, Jim, I've unmuted you if you wanted to say something.
Sure. No, this was an excellent presentation, and I just want to thank you for joining us. And I can just mimic Kathy's attempts at smoozing you by indicating we've never encountered this level of interaction at the end of it. So,
oh, awesome, good.
That is really great.
Thank you for the kind words, and I appreciate everybody participating. I look forward to getting a bunch of connection requests. I've developed great relationships with Kurt and Fred Bristol, and I'm assuming hopefully they're both on here, and if they are, thank you very much, and I look forward to working with you in the future. But anybody else, if you have, if you're doing workshops or you have clients that need some help, or feel free to call on me. I'll become a resource for you. Again, I know that you have to play a little bit of a different role with your clients, But I can assure you that that the clients that I work with and now the content, you've seen the content and the type of system and information that I deliver, I can absolutely help you and or your clients, and I'd love to do that for you. So feel free to reach out, let me know, and we'll see where it goes from there. And my contact information's on there. Reach out to me. I'd love to have a conversation with any and all of you, because I know you guys have a difficult job, and I appreciate all the work you guys do to try to help build business here in New York.
Dennis, thank you so much for presenting today, and everybody else, thank you for joining us. This will end our webinar.